Hello, and thank you to everybody who's joined. It is 2 o'clock Central, so we're going to get things started here as promised. First of all, thank you all for attending today for our webinar, Modern Approaches to Automating Label Printing, where we're going to share with you 3 of the powerful methods to automate your printing brought to you by TEKLYNX. I am Nick Recht. I will be your presenter today. I'm also the sales director here at TEKLYNX Americas. I've been with TEKLYNX for, it'll be 15 years in May, and boy, does time fly when you're having fun. I'm the rare occasion that I can actually say that I love my work. Not only do I love working with people, but I really love getting to use technology to solve business problems, and that's something I get to do every single day here at TEKLYNX, and I've got to do for quite some time at this point. I also enjoy building better connections in all aspects of my life. At work, I'm helping people build better connections with their ERP system, or sometimes something as straightforward as an Excel sheet. In my personal life, I'm building better connections with my friends and my family and my neighbors as I do my extracurricular activities at home and at school with my 3 small children. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Scott to have him introduce himself today.
Thanks, Nick. Excuse me. Hello, my name is Scott. I am product integration developer at TEKLYNX, and I've been here for 7 years, coming up this April. My passion for technology started very young. My dad taught me how to Control-Alt-Delete before he taught me how to read. So he was already setting me up for a career in technology and solutions. And aside from what I do here at work, I'm playing volleyball a lot of the time when I'm not at work, and I'm moonlighting as a Pokemon master as well.
Oh, nice intro, Scott. I used to be ashamed to say it, but I've been known to catch a Pokemon in my day as well.
I did get Nick on it a little bit.
Yeah. Great. Well, before we get into the content today, I want to start with a couple of housekeeping items. First and foremost, you may have noticed you are muted, so you can't interact with us while we're presenting. But we do want your participation in this webinar via the polling questions. Those polling questions will pop up on your screen. You use your mouse to just interact directly with the screen. I will announce the question, the options for the answer, and then I will give you a little time to answer. I'll share the results. You will simply see a breakdown of where those results landed. Your name or email or whatnot will not be associated with it. From there, if you have a question, I strongly encourage you to ask it. Feel free to just pop it right in the chat window. Click the chat icon, type your question, and click send. If you are anything like me, if you hesitate for 1 second to ask that question, it is going to completely fall out of your head and maybe never come back. The questions are only visible to the presenters, and we will discuss as many of them as we can at the end of the webinar today. But our moderator may shoot you an answer right when you ask it, so feel free to pop it in. I also encourage you to check out the handout section for a link to some helpful resources we have today. It's a really nice handout we made, and it's something you can feel free to download and take with you. So on our agenda today, we're really going to start with a print automation overview. Before we get into how we do it, we want to make sure to clearly define what print automation is, really the who, what, why, and how, before we get into the nuts and bolts and actually have Scott share with you a live demonstration of 2 out of the 3 powerful methods in which we're going to present today. We're going to briefly discuss some of the features that you guys can look forward to getting in our 2024 product release. And then we're going to wrap things up with a live Q&A session at the end, where we will be addressing those questions that you guys popped in throughout the presentation today. So before we get into our print automation overview, we want to launch our first polling question. So that first polling question is, which challenges do you find most significant in your current label printing processes or systems? So I'm going ahead and launching that polling question. Your options for your answer are inefficient manual processes, limited flexibility in your printing options, integration difficulties with your existing business systems, or lack of label printing in an existing software application. So we'll keep this polling question open for about another 40 seconds, or until I get over 80% of the audience here today who've answered. We just popped over the 45% mark, so you guys are doing a great job. Just reach out with that mouse and read and answer the question. Let us know which challenges do you find the most significant in your current labeling process or systems today. All right, you guys have 20 more seconds. We are over the 66% mark in quantity of the audience who has answered. So you know who you are if you haven't answered. Now's your time to go ahead and share that information with us. 5, 4, 3, last chance. 2, 1. Perfect. We did have a pretty significant majority of the audience answer, so that is good news. And I'm going to go ahead and share those results so we can discuss. So it looks like the two most popular responses were inefficient manual processes and integration difficulty with existing systems. Not a surprise at all. I will say one of the things I've battled the most in my career here at TEKLYNX has been helping people replace their inefficient manual processes to generate the printing of a label with, in many scenarios, processes where labeling simply becomes a result of an action in an existing business system, which ties in closely with integration difficulties with existing systems. For the people who selected integration difficulties with existing systems, I'd encourage you to pay close attention to Scott's demonstration. When he starts out, he's really going to set the stage by showing kind of our introduction to what integration can look like with a simple database connection, and take us all the way through fully integrated labeling automation. So if that is a challenge you experience, you're certainly in the right spot today. So again, thank you for participating with that answer. Let's dive into really the meat and potatoes of why we're here today. So what is print automation? When we talk about print automation, we're really defining the replacement of a task in which a company or individuals may execute tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of times a day in their business to make it so that their printer prints the label in which they need to ultimately finish the production of their product. Why would people want to do that? Well, when we see our customers executing what we often refer to as the file open, print, and pray process of selecting a label, selecting a printer, potentially keying in print time data, maybe keying in a quantity, selecting, validating they haven't made a mistake, and clicking print. There's a lot of fingerprints and frankly a lot of time and potential errors associated with that printing process. When you replace a process like that with labeling simply becoming a result of an action you execute in the system that might be telling you what products to produce, or the system that is holding the data in which you're manually keying in at print time, not only do you save all that time, but you significantly reduce the potential for an error by reducing those print time fingerprints. Basically, it's faster, more efficient, and far less prone to error. Who does it? I know it's pretty cliche to say, well, everybody can benefit from print automation. And I would say it's truly not everybody, but it is most organizations. If you're executing a printing process that you're doing more than a handful of times a day, or if you have multiple printing lines where people are making decisions at the time of print, you could likely benefit from replacing that manual process with a automated printing workflow. And how do we do it? We do it in three main ways. Codesoft with its APIs, which we'll definitely demonstrate for you today. Sentinel with its low-code generic integration with any ERP, WMS, MES, or proprietary application, or even our TEKLYNX SDK, which might be powering some behind-the-scenes printing in a system you already leverage today. So the how, we'll dig a little bit deeper into it in the demonstration and our future description slides here. So when we talk print automation here, and really the piggybacking off the how, it is three powerful methods. Codesoft with its APIs, Sentinel, as I mentioned, our low-code generic integration, and our TEKLYNX SDK. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each one of these methods and actually live demonstrate for you both Codesoft and Sentinel in action here. So who benefits from Codesoft with its APIs? So before we do that, actually, I want to start with the what. When our end users and partners integrate their application with Codesoft and its API, they are actually programmatically commanding the printing of a label from their application through Codesoft, leveraging the .NET wrapper or the legacy but still supported ActiveX method of commanding Codesoft to print. This is typically leveraged by companies who have local deployments of business systems on many, many client applications and require a print engine on every one of those local deployments. As more applications move to the cloud, we do see popularity of other methods growing, but it's really in our DNA here at TEKLYNX to be able to support you at whatever speed you adapt to changes. So this is something that is certainly powerful and certainly done very often. When we talk about the why, I want to tackle why on two fronts. One, why would somebody want to do it? And two, why would they want to do it this way? Really, the why somebody would want to do this would be if they have maybe many stations, all with printers plugged directly into the USB, or if you can still find them, those legacy LPT ports. And they don't want to worry about changing their entire infrastructure to network those devices. They want to keep the action happening on the station in which they're printing from. And really the why you'd choose this over a different method comes down to the same concept, is printers plugged in locally, or really the hard work happening on that client station. So with that, bear with me as I make Scott the presenter to actually live demonstrate a little bit about Codesoft and its API integration for you. So Scott, you should be the presenter now. I'll give you the thumbs up when I can see your screen.
Excellent. Thank you.
And you're live, I can see it.
Fantastic. So Nick has done an exceptional job at teeing me up here on getting kind of our feet wet into Codesoft. And what I want to do first is give you some context as to what we're printing throughout the future demonstrations, and also how automation kind of starts at a smaller level. So what I have here is Codesoft open to a part label, and I actually have 3 different labels. And you'll notice as I'm paging through them that they all look very, very similar to each other. In fact, they're identical, except for the fact that they are just different part information. So what we see commonly in inefficient processes is having one label per product or one label per part. And while the label looks the same mostly, it is now a task of managing to as many labels as you have products. And that really comes to a head in the inefficiencies when there's a change required to the label, or there's a marketing update to your company's logo, or there's a new requirement for what needs to be on the label. So now that change needs to be applied across hundreds or thousands of labels. So an approach we can take to reduce that repetitive nature of creating a label per product is by linking up that label to a database of some sort. In this case, I have the exact same label, but the difference is I am using what's called a table lookup, which is a variable within Codesoft on the label, which allows a user at print time to type in a particular part number, which is then displaying all the correct information based on that part number. And this table could live anywhere. Oftentimes it lives within a management system or a inventory tracking system. In this case, I'm just using a simple Excel spreadsheet, but we could go all the way up to enterprise database level as well. And so the task now for label management has just been minimized significantly. What we need to do to change a label or add a logo or even add a new part, all we need to do is update this table, and that change will be reflected in my label.
Great information, Scott. So one thing I really like to comment on here is think about the change in the quantity of files that you need to manage when you go from potentially 1,000 different labels, all similar shape and layout, to one template connected directly to your single source of the truth. Sometimes simply making this change within your business can help with that integration, not only to fix a lot of the current problems you have in manual entry at print time, but also to really expedite a printing process by eliminating the need to select a label at print time.
Exactly. So now that we kind of have the groundwork laid on the label and what kind of automation is happening at the label level, let's zoom out a little into Codesoft and its APIs. So what I'm showing here is just a sample application that comes packaged with Codesoft. It gives you access to the source code as well, so you can see how all the different functions are working. But this is a pretty straightforward interface that allows me to pick a label on the left. It is then commanding Codesoft to say, hey, show me a preview and display a preview of that label as it sits. So user can select the label, see what they're going to print, and then go and change the data that lives on that label so that they can print the correct label at that time. So this same thing is happening that we were talking about before of updating a part number, which is then looking at a database to pull the correct data on, and then we can choose our printer and print that label. And so Nick, use your imagination with me for a minute. This is obviously just a printing application. We're not doing anything fancy other than printing a label, which we can do out of Codesoft. But imagine that you already have a homegrown application or an application that you're using where users are interacting with fulfilling orders, doing different functions within your business. You can build that printing functionality into that same application that they're already using. So we can have a familiar interface for our users and add it almost as a feature to your own application that the users are using every day.
So what you're telling me is I wouldn't need to pick the label. I wouldn't need to populate the variable. That could simply be passed through from my existing application.
Exactly. And all the business logic flows, they don't have to interrupt what they're doing to go print a label. It can just kind of be built into the process.
Yeah. What I really find fascinating about this many times, and it's something that I've certainly seen in my personal experience and interacting with business systems, is that they're like a family member or a sibling. Say you don't need to like them, but you need to love them, right? So if you are, say, for example, having to interact with SAP or Oracle or Dynamics or a different business system every day, when we deploy this automation, even though you don't love having to interact with that system, you can make it so you don't need to leave that system to trigger your label printing.
Very good. I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah. I do love my sister though, so I hope she's watching and here's that.
Yeah, great. So we'll change the presenter back to Nick here and we'll go back into the presentation.
Perfect. All right, I have shared my screen. Scott, are we good to go?
I can see it.
Perfect. So that was the Codesoft plus API demo. What we want to discuss with you now is our Sentinel product. Sentinel functions differently than Codesoft with its API because it is a low code or no code integration. Rather than programmatically command Codesoft via a .NET wrapper or the ActiveX method, Sentinel is acting as a middleware between SAP, Oracle, Dynamics, NetSuite, whatever business system it may make the most sense for you to print labels out of, and Codesoft, and it's simply waiting for a print request to be able to automatically print out of that system. When Scott gets to his demonstration here in a minute, we're going to demonstrate 3 methods. First one being monitoring for a flat file. Examples of a flat file would be an XML file or a CSV. In our demo today, it's a very generic, easy to follow text file that has the key information we need. He's also going to demonstrate monitoring a database. More often than not, the back end of the system in which you're printing out of contains a database in one fashion or another, and we can monitor that for changes or action to be able to print a label. And then the third and fastest growing in popularity method is our Restful API method of automating printing through Sentinel. So it's really a middleware that can receive requests in potentially many different ways simultaneously to automate printing for you. We typically see this leveraged by larger scale environments. I'd say the typical entry point is 5 or more printers, 5 or more printers that are on the network, where Codesoft with its APIs are often deployed on your client workstations, on the floor or wherever the manufacturing is being done. Sentinel is typically deployed on a server, and in many occasions, managing printing to potentially thousands of devices simultaneously. So the why print automation remains the same, right? It reduces those manual processes, keeps you in the business system you are familiar with, and reduces the potential for errors. But why Sentinel over Codesoft with API really comes down to, do you want to automate printing from a server, so manage one station, one installation, versus a wide variety of client-side installations? So with that, I'm probably gonna not be able to keep my mouth shut and chime in a few times while Scott's demoing, but I'm gonna pass it to Scott to demo those methods for you, and we'll make sure to hit home a couple other key components about why this method of automation is really geared towards an enterprise with a lot of printers and a lot of action going on.
Awesome. Nick, once again, proving he is the Steve Nash of webinars, just setting me up for the dump here.
I was expecting you to call me your setter with your volleyball experience.
That is a miss. It'd be exactly the same.
Oh, so, if I were playing volleyball, it would be a miss if I was setting.
So what I have open here is 4 different screens. 3 of them are file directories and 1 is Sentinel. So Sentinel itself, Nick described it well as a middleware that is sitting server side that is waiting for commands to print. And of those 3 methods, you can see I have 3 different watches set up in here for each of the methods that we're going to look at, being the file drop, the database watch, and a RESTful API. I do not need to be logged into this server or looking at this manager in order for Sentinel to be ready to process jobs. Being that it runs as a service, as long as that server is turned on, it will continue to process jobs. I'm just keeping it open here so that we can watch it as it interacts with the print requests coming in. So the first method that we're looking at here is the flat file that Nick described. And this is a long-standing method because it is kind of tried and true. It's from the early days of systems talking with flat files and little data files. And it is still very popular. Most systems that you work with on a day-to-day basis can produce some sort of flat file in XML or CSV form or any other form. This is a pretty straightforward one to follow, so I like to use it in demos. It's basically describing the same things that you would ask a person to print. So Sentinel is in essence just a very fast print user. If I were to tell Nick, hey, go print me a label, he would ask me for 4 different elements, really. He would say, which label are you trying to print? What is the data that you want on that label? Which printer do you want me to print it to, and how many of those labels do you want? And those are the same 4 elements that are going to be consistent throughout all of our requests to Sentinel. So what I have here is just this flat file sitting in a directory. I'm going to copy and paste it over to the directory that I've configured Sentinel to watch. This is not how users will be interacting with Sentinel. Oftentimes they'll be working in your SAP, your JD Edwards, your Oracle, what have you, and on a triggering of their action, whether they hit fulfill or hit print or whatever the action may be, the flat file will then be created and dropped into this directory. Sentinel then picks it up and then processes a print, and my output today is just a PDF directory so we can see it kind of from front to back how all the prints are happening. So I'm going to copy and paste it here, and as soon as I let it go, we see Sentinel immediately picks it up and passes the job. It was a valid job, and on the output we get exactly the label that we asked for. We get the toys label with part number 11, and that same automation that we talked about in the beginning, where the label is smart enough to go get that relevant data and plug it into the label, is still happening. So we're not losing or leaving behind any of this stuff. We're more just kind of building blocks up into a more efficient process.
Yeah, I'd say, or what I like to add to the, this method of print automation is if you're using an ERP system, more likely ERP, WMS, warehouse management, whatever system it is, it likely has the ability to export data or create maybe a one-click report. And the low-code, no-code generic integration you can experience from Sentinel allows you to monitor the location in which that one-click report might be getting exported to make the result of that one-click report a label being printed. One thing that I forgot to mention, and shame on me for that when you were showing off Codesoft, Scott, or Codesoft with the API, you notice there was a big document in there. Many of our customers find that when they're automating out of a system and are automating the printing of labels, they experience some challenges with not being able to maybe modify a pick list, pack list, work order as quickly as they'd like. So just like we can export the data, or just like you can export the data for label printing, you can do the same for a document and use the same solution to automate that printing there as well. So sorry to steal the thunder a little bit. I just did.
No, great. No, that's great. You spoke the words as they were getting ready to go in my mouth. So the other thing too that I'll kind of hammer home, we've talked about it a little, but Sentinel doesn't necessarily know or care where this file is coming from. I created this myself, but it could be coming from an SAP or an Oracle or whatever system that you are using, and in that way it is completely agnostic to the system and also decoupled from that system as well. When it comes to system upgrades, it's a big deal to upgrade your ERP and go through that process. Sentinel is not dependent upon a particular version or a particular package, so we can leave Sentinel and just in that upgrade process make sure that this flow is brought over, and Sentinel will continue to work in the way that it was before.
Yeah, great point.
Cool. So the second method we're looking at here is watching a database. So I have this table set up. It may be in my ERP system. Oftentimes what we see in enterprise applications is that it's most often a graphical user interface that sits on top of some database somewhere. And very often too, when we're talking to those different vendors of ERP systems or WMS systems, it's a pretty easy task for them to say, oh, on this action, move data into another table. So we're monitoring a table here, and it could be, a case of the same as before, a user clicking print, a user clicking fulfill. It could also be on whenever an order is processed and have no user input whatsoever, and that data gets written, Sentinel picks it up and prints a label. So if you ignore the first 2 columns here for a minute, these 4 elements are the exact same things that we were looking at before, where we have the label, the printer, the quantity, and the data that's going onto that label. So as soon as a record gets dropped into this table, Sentinel is constantly polling and monitoring this for new jobs. and will come in and scoop up that print request and print it. So I have a little bit of movie magic happening here. You'll see as soon as I hit enter, Sentinel will process the job, and I'm filling in the fields with a little bit of movie magic, but the same idea applies. As soon as I add this record, we see Sentinel does its little parsing state, and then we get that label on the other side with, again, the same data and the same label that we asked for with part number 102 to our PDF printer and a copy of one. So it feels a little repetitive talking, you know, and maybe listening to it like it's the same thing, but the idea is we're just opening as many channels as possible for whatever works best for your system to automate label printing out of.
Yeah, when I'd say, you know, I lean on it a lot, but I have been here for 15 years. 15 years ago, the main integration method was flat file. And it was kind of like putting a letter in an envelope and hoping you get you know, the item you ordered from your Sears catalog or whatnot. The database grew in popularity very fast because of that status field. You could not only make the print request, but you could have your system monitor that status field to say, hey, it was successfully set to the printer. You should get it. And that was all a nice volleyball setup for you to talk about the Restful API there, Scott.
It was, again, a great set that I will take to Spiketown here with the Restful API. So similar to what we were looking at before in flat file and database watch, we have a JSON payload here, and JSON, if you have not seen it before, is almost the language of RESTful APIs. We're sending information in some shape or format. And in here we can see that this is the same setup. We have all of our same elements here. We can change our part number to something that we want to print, say 77. And what I have as my other watch here, Sentinel is listening for a job to come in at this endpoint. So as soon as I hit execute, we'll see Sentinel once again do its little blip. And out comes my print job on the other side with our part number that we asked for, and that's 77. And RESTful database stuff, you know, all this, we're talking about some generally technical things that are happening behind the scenes, but a lot of systems have done a great job at abstracting away the details of it and actually allowing for just button clicks within the system to set up these different modes of communication. I've seen a few systems that will allow you to configure a workflow that says, hey, write to a table, or hey, send this JSON request with REST API. It's becoming much more of a low-code, no-code approach to something that is generally something that requires code. So that is a great advantage too, especially in the sense that Sentinel, I've not done any programming myself to configure it. It's all just been button clicks and entering passwords and saying, hey, look here for data. So it is a nice option, especially for those systems that allow for those different communications.
Yeah, I'd say if you scroll down in your Swagger interface there, Scott, you can see that one of the really big benefits of the RESTful API, kind of piggybacking on the database, is not only do you give Sentinel that request, you actually get live feedback saying, hey, I'm thinking, hey, I'm done, hey, I've printed. And it can do that all so you can have a little status field in your business system saying, hey, I sent the request, hey, it received the request, hey, it's printing the request. You know as well as me that when something doesn't print, your instinct is to jam on that button 800 times. So having a system that says, hey, I've received the request, but it's rather large, so I'm processing it, is beneficial. The other thing I really want to make sure we hit home is the generic integration aspect of it. Any cloud-based system you're deploying, whether it is small scale or big scale, relies upon RESTful APIs for its integration methods. And if it doesn't, if it's still leveraging the database or the flat file, our system lives side by side with it, not within it. And we have found that that's a competitive advantage for many of our customers, as they don't need to worry about upgrading their labeling system with their business system. They don't need to worry about acquiring a new company that uses a different ERP system and not being able to leverage their existing automation utility when they're leveraging something like Sentinel. So you got anything else to add to that, Scott?
No, I think the only thing here is just to see, we've been seeing different automation methods. Sentinel is a workhorse. We see as soon as that process puts the flat file or adds a record to a database or sends the request, Sentinel snaps through that in about less than a second. So the throughput here is something to highlight as well, and something we haven't really talked about is it can handle many hundreds and thousands of requests over the course of weeks. However we're processing, the speed is not something we're sacrificing here.
Yeah, on that note, and I'm sorry I'm so forgetful today, guys. What I really like to highlight with the Restful API is as your business systems migrate to the cloud, Sentinel can go along for that ride as well, kind of reducing or in some cases eliminating your need for an IT infrastructure. So if you, for example, deploy NetSuite or a version of SAP or Oracle in the cloud, you can put a Sentinel server in the cloud as well, kind of let it live next to it, maybe bridge that Sentinel server into your network so it can still automate the printing to your printers. But no longer do you need to have it local and expose that Restful API. It can kind of go along with the cloud with you. And the Restful API is a big part of that. And when we get into the 2024 talk, we'll highlight that a little more.
Exactly right.
Cool. All right, Scott, can you confirm my screen shared out again?
Looking good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So that was a Sentinel demo. The last method of integration that we want to discuss today, not demonstrate, is our SDK. So we do offer an SDK. It is the TEKLYNX SDK, and it functions relatively similar to Codesoft with its APIs, but it is meant to function completely in the background. It is often deployed with ERP, warehouse management, or other business systems that you might be using that aren't experts in labeling, but want to give you the ability to design and print a label. So if you are, a software publisher, a software manufacturer, it is something that is available. It's part of our toolkit, and we're happy to talk to you about it. The reason I bring it up here is that we have found, especially recently, there are many of our end users who want to deploy their homegrown applications as more of a package to their stations. And the SDK is really a great way to kind of bring that labeling along for the ride without having to maybe license your designer and print engine on many different stations. It is, so like I said, typically leveraged by software developers, but sometimes there's use cases where it makes sense for our end users. So we just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that that's out there, because I think somebody famous once said, knowing is half the battle, right? Do you know who that was?
Yeah.
You don't? All right, cool. So with that being said, let's launch polling question number 2. Polling question number 2 is, which method are you most interested in exploring? I'm going to go ahead and launch this. We'll keep it open for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. But are you most interested in potentially automatically printing to local workstations, maybe with Codesoft with this API? Are you more interested in the centralization and printing from your ERP, WMS, or other business system? Are you interested in embedding label printing in an existing software? Or were you here to really learn more about all of them? It's been open for about 32 seconds, and we have about 40% of the audience. So please, you know who you are. You got 20 more seconds. Participate with your answer. Which of these methods that we talked about today are you the most interested in exploring? Not only will this help with kind of the discussion after this, but it'll be a good way for you to think about how you'd like us to circle back with you after the webinar today. All right, 5 more seconds. You know who you are. We're over the 60% mark. Oh, there we go. 3, 2, 1, perfect. So let's go ahead and share these results. So it looks like the most popular one was, I want to learn more about all of them, which I'm assuming based on the name of the webinar was going to be the answer. But the second most is centralizing and printing from an ERP, WMS, or warehouse management or business system. Not really surprising at all. As businesses grow, the benefits of centrally managing things also becomes more important. And that is one that typically we leverage Sentinel to be able to do. So thank you for sharing. Now, for those of you who were more interested in automatically printing to local workstations, don't feel left out or don't feel lost in the dust, because it is something that I don't believe will ever go away. For every client we have moving to the cloud and trying to be on the bleeding edge of technology, we have another one saying, hey, I print in a bubble. I can't rely upon any internet connection, and half of the data is coming from local PLCs or different data collection methods or scales at the time of print. I need something that functions right here. And that's something that is often very well deployed with Codesoft with its API. On occasion, a local kind of standalone deployment is handled. So thank you very much for participating with that answer. I'm going to go ahead and close that out and continue with talking about kind of where to go from here. So you signed up for the webinar, you attended. I sincerely thank you for coming, and I don't want you to feel like you're just supposed to take this information and make a decision by yourself. We are here to help you kind of navigate through this. More than likely, you're an expert in manufacturing your pharmaceuticals or medical devices or widgets or gizmos or food. You shouldn't have to be an expert in labeling as well. That's what we're here to help with. So we're here to help kind of guide you through the process to find what is the best fit for you, to provide you a reliable and long-lasting solution. It's kind of in our DNA here at TEKLYNX that we don't want you to do it alone. Our success is heavily dependent on our customers' success. So we want to come along with that journey for you. It bleeds through everything we do, from the fact that many of our high-level managers are regularly on the phone with customers or doing site visits to kind of see what's going on, to the fact that our customer support crew answers every single phone call live. So you're always talking to a human being who can get you the information you need the quickest. I'd say the best way to highlight, the partnership mindset to the way we deploy our solutions is highlighted in the .foods case study that we have published. They're automating printing to over 300 printers. They're a company located, we're in Wisconsin, they're right south of us in Illinois, and they were able to kind of deploy automation in an easy fashion, experience return on their investment in less than 1 year, and really valued the partnership aspect to deployment, support, and upgrades. With that being said, I know we shared a lot of information with you today. One other plug I want to make is around the retirement of Loftware's LPS. They're retiring support for it on December 31st, 2024. And with that comes some forced change. And we've already helped quite a few legacy Loftware customers replace that solution with our Sentinel solution. We actually had a customer say they replaced Loftware. They had big savings over the cost of upgrading Loftware, and it came at a better cost. And they were a company with over 5,000 employees. So speaking to the scope of what it can do, really TEKLYNX having the best customer support in the industry. So with that, we're expecting the launch of our 2024 products mid to late summer this year. With that, you're going to see a lot of enhancements around Restful API, both in Codesoft as well as in Sentinel. It's kind of the key method in which people are integrating and automating nowadays. So we're trying very hard to be able to support that. We are introducing in the 2024 launch compatibility with cloud-connected printers. We're starting with Zebra and Sato, and we anticipate a lot of other big name manufacturers going along for the ride. Imagine a world where your ERP system is in the cloud. Either TEKLYNX or you are hosting a Sentinel server, and your printers are simply connected to Wi-Fi in your business, and they're able to be printed to from that cloud server of Sentinel. Really reducing, and in some cases, eliminating an IT infrastructure at a manufacturing facility. It's going to be a great new world, guys. And then with our Label Archive and our TEKLYNX Central product, we're going to see a lot of enhancements around security with different authentication methods and different back-end communication methods for I suppose the IT security stuff that's even a little over my head, ease of use enhancements and different printing processes to make it so we can complement your business system even better. So with that, I want to dive into the Q&A session. So sometimes we lose people during the Q&A session. So if you leave, you're going to be prompted for a survey. Please fill it out. Let us know how we did. Let us know what you thought about the content. Otherwise, stick around and give me just a brief second here to dig into the first couple questions. All right, I have them up. I'm just making them large enough to read. This interface makes them relatively small for me here. I was joking with Scott beforehand that I don't think they could have made it smaller. All right, first question. How much does Sentinel typically cost? How long does it take to implement? And is there expected downtime? Well, that's 3 questions, so it's a 3-for-1 for you today. How much does it typically cost? I'd say if you're integrating with a system and needing to only automate printing to 5 devices and you're an existing TEKLYNX customer, I believe the entry point for a 1-year subscription is less than $2,500. From there, it scales up based on the quantity of printers. But in traditional sales guy fashion, I'll tell you that the typical ROI on deploying Sentinel is less than 1-year time, mainly by reduction in errors and expedited printing process times. How long does it take to implement? So that is certainly variable. We have, and I think when I was the engineer, I can say I've done it once or twice, but Scott's kind of perfected the art in his previous time as one of the engineers. We've done deployments in less than a couple hours, particularly if somebody has that print request ready and the ability to spin up a server in Azure or AWS. Install is a click and a few necks. Integration is a map we can do beforehand. In larger scale environments where you're kind of tweaking the business system to be able to get that request out, it can take a little longer, but typically the work is not on the deployment of the application side. And as far as the expected downtime for a deployment, it's typically none, right? We deploy Sentinel side by side with what you're doing today, and we're very liberal in allowing you to run both systems simultaneously, and then you can cut over at your leisure. So we can typically do 0 downtime deployments and upgrades. Here's a fun question. Are there business systems you don't work with or integrate with? We have strategically chosen to go down the route of generic integration rather than proprietary to business systems. Now, the main benefit of that generic integration is we can integrate with absolutely any system as long as it can spit out that print request for us. Not only does that make it more stable and have benefits and upgradability and whatnot, it also makes it easier to deploy and acquire for the companies that select our product in their process. I'm a reseller. Can I sell Codesoft plus API? You absolutely can. Codesoft plus API it's in our price book. So if you have our product catalog, you can see it. Every license of Codesoft comes with the ability to print to 1. Our subscription licenses have the ability to scale up there as many as you need in both single and network user licenses. All right, hello, do you have a customer that have integrated Sentinel with Sage X3 ERP. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I know we have definitely had customers integrate with Sage. I don't know the specific version, and it's not because we don't care. It's simply because of that generic integration approach. As long as Sage can give us that RESTful API, give us that flat file or that database record, we can do it. So I'm confident in saying, yes, we can. I don't have the specifics on Sage X3. We have a few questions about recordings, and I believe we will share those out, but marketing can keep me honest there. We have somebody interested in a demo of the SDK. We will certainly be circling back with you after this and talk about how we can get that in your hands. All right, the questions are popping in hot now. Sorry if I'm answering them as they come in, so I won't forget all the ones that came in earlier. I'm sorry. Can Codesoft pull information directly from SharePoint? That's one that I think we'd have to investigate. Codesoft has a few ways to pull information from cloud systems, whether it's via OData, or sometimes we write a little VB script to acquire that data. We don't have like a proprietary SharePoint integration, but I'm certain that we can find a way to get the data you need from SharePoint onto the label in an efficient manner. So let's have that conversation after the call here today. Can we have more specific information on the RESTful API? We'll circle back with you and get you everything you need, both Sentinel and SDK wise. Oh, we have some good Latin American representation here today. Is Sentinel available for Mexico? Can I upgrade label matrix to Sentinel? That's really an awesome question. I know a couple of my really large medical device deployments were legacy label matrix users that are now using Sentinel. Not only can you upgrade from label matrix to Sentinel and Codesoft, but we have a label converter that will make it so your labels will migrate from label matrix to Codesoft. You're just going to need to quality control them to make sure that they are what you need. So what is the difference between Codesoft API, .NET Wrapper, and ActiveX, and Sentinel label print automation? So big difference is Codesoft with the API, you're going to write programmatic code to say open, select label, populate data, and print. Sentinel's going to live side by side with that generic low-code integration. All right, for the API, do we have to install both Codesoft label design software and the print form on every workstation? Good question. So with Codesoft and its APIs, wherever you want we'll call it the engine or the print engine to be able to do that processing, you'll need a deployment of Codesoft. As Scott had mentioned, that print form is certainly something that you can use. We actually provide it as a sample app. So when you're kind of writing your code in your business system, you can steal those valuable snippets. Well, I suppose it's not stealing because we're giving it away. You can have those valuable snippets of code to kind of lower the load on that work. But typically there is a deployment of something everywhere you have Codesoft with the API. But everybody does deploy it differently. I recently worked with a really large company that's been using our product for a long time that is using Codesoft with the API, but made a nice little web page that communicates with a server to do that as well. So it can handle it however you want. If we have a custom homegrown business system, which solution would you recommend to be able to print labels from? You know, I'd recommend leaning on us to have a conversation. I need to know a little bit more, you know, is it web-based? Are there many client sides? What portion of your solution do you want to integrate with? But I'm certain we'd be able to find out or be able to kind of help guide you through. And it's not unheard of for us to say, hey, let's have you try one or the other method to make sure it's going to work for you. All right, and we have a couple of questions that are I don't think makes sense to answer in front of a live audience. All right, last chance. If somebody wants to pop it in, I will, I'll take it. All right. So with that being said, I want to reiterate, thank you guys so much for attending today. I hope you can feel the passion for labeling bleed out of both Scott and my pores here. It's something we both have a lot of skin in the game on, and it's really something we love to do. I think we love it not only because it's helping solve those problems, but the people we've got to work with throughout our career here at TEKLYNX. Feel free to download that resource. It is a really nice resource that can kind of guide you to everything TEKLYNX for what you need. Feel free to give us a call. We answer every phone call live. That is my direct email address. I am very happy to communicate with any of our audience members today, or even any of the people who might be watching the recording. I am typically very good at being responsive in less than a day, and I expect you to hold me accountable to that. So thank you guys very much. Check us out on our social media outlets, and then last but not least, please let us know those details on the survey today, not only how we did, but what we could do better, or maybe even content for a future presentation, because the best ideas, just like the features that get into our product, come from you guys out there in the audience. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.